It's been over 48 hours since we learned the law offices of Ballin, and Fishman are taking on the NCAA on behalf of James Wiseman, and it's been over 48 hours since Memphis made the unprecedented decision to straight up defy NCAA protocol, play James Wiseman in spite of the question of his eligibility. So Clayton and I are here to take a look at what we know, what we expect, and what this all means for the Tigers this season. Clayton, I think the biggest takeaway that we're talking about after this weekend is that there was an impermissible benefit. At least that's the way the facts lay things out as we look into all of that this means.
Right. If you look strictly at the NCAA bylaws, it's tough to argue that an impermissible benefit took place. And if you look at Memphis's statement, it's hard to argue that when they said, based on information that necessitated a deeper investigation, the university began to work alongside the NCAA in investigating the matter. And after several months of interviews and a review of documentation, it was determined that in the summer of 2017, while James was a high school student and prospective student athlete, Penny Hardaway provided $11,500 in moving expenses to assist the Wiseman family in their relocation to Memphis, unbeknownst to James. And that obviously is a problem because in 2008, Penny Hardaway was designated a booster with that $1 million donation to the University of Memphis Athletics Department.
We're looking at the facts here, but just on a sheer speculation standpoint, it doesn't smell particularly right that there wasn't some sort of, if they had all those facts, if they knew that $11,500 number and everything was there for them to see, you would think that perhaps there was new information that provided them this switcheroo mentality to come back. And, you know, after James played one game for Memphis this year, and now we're facing this situation once the season had already begun.
Right. The question is, what did they know by May? And what changed after that point that then reversed and made them renege on their initial honoring of that final certification that they said was in error?
And now we move forward. I mean, the biggest thing with all of this is that we move forward, and there is a basketball season occurring. And for the time being, Penny Hardaway, after their game against University of Illinois at Chicago, said James Wiseman played that night. James Wiseman will continue to play. He's able to do that because of the temporary restraining order that he was granted on Friday when all of this went down. That temporary restraining order generally lasts for about 15 days as we lead up to an injunction hearing that they will have. That is scheduled for November 18th, I believe, at this
right.
time. Exactly. His representation has said that that date is subject to move. This is a whole legal, this now becomes a matter of James Wiseman, and I've seen this analogy used over and over, but he's fighting on the court in games, and now he's quite literally fighting in a court for his eligibility status. Where do we think that this goes from here?
Well, it's going to be an ongoing battle. From what, again, neither of us are lawyers.
I stopped LSAT prep like 4 weeks in. Seriously.
Well,
I made it 4 weeks.
4 more weeks than I had. But from what we understand, a notice of removal is likely from the NCAA that would get it out of Shelby County. And if that were to happen, then this could be delayed a little bit further. And the TRO, the temporary restraining order that's allowing James to play right now, could be extended until that injunction hearing occurs. So when that occurs, that will be likely when we find out whether James can continue playing for the season or not.
And that TRO is a really big thing here because by doing the TRO, this is essentially Memphis going into uncharted waters in college athletics by usually, I mean, you take this past weekend, the example of Chase Young at Ohio State. He was in an eligibility issue with, you know, taking a loan to get Rose Bowl tickets allegedly for his girlfriend. But in Ohio State's case, they sat their player, and now he is suspended for 4 games. That is the agreement that, or the, what would you call it, the reckoning that came down from the NCAA in that situation. And that's how these things usually happen. Once the NCAA provides the university with the knowledge that, you know, a player is quote unquote likely ineligible, it's up to the university to make that ruling and to sit out that player as things get figured out. Memphis is not doing that. Memphis is like, bye, James is going to play.
Right, and the difference with these two situations is that, with football, there's a lot more players that are more valuable, that, you know, across the plane, less valuable compared to your center with James Wiseman in this case. The difference is Ohio State's complying, Memphis is not, but Ohio State also has a CFP on the line right now that they're looking to go towards, that they're currently #1 ranked in that, and they don't want to jeopardize that, where Memphis doesn't have something yet and might not have quite as good of a season, probably won't have as good of a season if they don't have James Wiseman in there.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about it when this all broke, and there was a lot of very drastic statements immediately, like, the season is over. The season's not over, the season just changes. I mean, the talent is still there on this Memphis roster, but what James Wiseman adds to this team, I mean, we saw it from their exhibition games into their first 2 games of the season. His presence is greatly appreciated,
right,
from rebounding, shot blocking, dunking, everything that he brings to the court as a 7-1 unicorn, as we like to call him in the city.
And the projected 2020 #1 overall pick in the NBA draft tends to make an impact at the college level like James Wiseman does. So there's a reason that Memphis would very much like to have him on the court, obviously. But in playing him on Friday, they opened themselves up to a lot more potential penalties. There's a specific bylaw for the NCAA about this very scenario, and it opens themselves up to the possibility of the NCAA invoking not just a vacation of wins, but also a postseason ban or bans beyond this upcoming year. Not only that, but also some financial penalties can be included as well. So there is a lot of risk that Memphis is going into with this.
They're risking it all. I mean, quite literally, they are risking it all for James Wiseman. And they obviously would not be doing this if they didn't think that they had some kind of a case. History is certainly not on their side. The NCAA is one of the largest, biggest, baddest corporations in America, and things tend to go in their favor. Whether you, sitting at home, think that that's fair or not, at this time, the NCAA has their rules, and they have been able to make sure that people and their members, institutions, continue to follow those rules. So by Memphis kind of just blatantly going against what the NCAA has said, what kind of statement do you think that this makes?
Well, #1, clearly they think James Wiseman has a case, and there's the reward of taking on the system and beating the NCAA and possibly bringing about change along with that. The other end of it, having James Wiseman for a season brings you from maybe a second weekend team to a Final Four contender, and that obviously has value with the basketball season. But in a larger picture for Penny Hardaway, what has been his pitch throughout the last year to all of these recruits that got him the #1 recruiting class? It's, I'm going to get you prepared for the NBA. Penny Hardaway owes it to him to get him ready for the NBA, and that does not happen if he is ineligible and he is sitting on the bench. Now, that said, Jessica, can you think of a better situation that Memphis can get behind as a city than their favorite son and their favorite team taking on the system and the powers that be? Like, Memphis versus everyone has never been truer. We want all the smoke. They're now getting it.
Penny Hardaway has been an anti-establishment coach since coming to Memphis. He has preached doing it his way, which is a different way than the Blue Bloods. That has been why he has blatantly said, my team is capable of going to a Final Four. My team is capable of winning a national championship, when other coaches in the past would shy away from that kind of bold language. And now you're in a situation where Penny Hardaway is living up to this persona that he has built himself as a coach who is not afraid to fight against how things have been done, and he's not afraid to stand up for his players. That's what this all comes back to, in my opinion, is that, and I do want to be perfectly clear, and this is something we haven't noted, this is James Wiseman versus the NCAA. Leslie Ballin is representing James Wiseman. He is not representing the University of Memphis.
Right.
So this is a fight between a player and the NCAA. But the player is a part of the University of Memphis, and the player is a player of Penny Hardaway. So this all comes back on him. And it's Penny proceeding to go about the player-first mentality. And when you look around the NBA, who are some of the biggest critics of the NCAA right now? NBA players. I mean,
right.
Who is constantly speaking out? LeBron James is one of the biggest continuous critics of what the NCAA is doing and how they operate. Penny Hardaway has a connection with LeBron James. Penny Hardaway is an NBA brand guy, and that's following suit, and he's now bringing that into the college ranks, and we're seeing this in certainly a new level, and it's against advice, and it's against maybe what is even the right thing to do. I'm not here to say is it right or wrong what Memphis is doing, but the risks are there as we have laid out, and now it's all about taking those risks and rolling the dice, and maybe they're going to roll in your favor, but if they don't, this could be detrimental for the University of Memphis basketball program moving forward. And those things that you brought up with what they could face, vacated wins, a vacated season. How is that worth everything moving forward? Is it worth going to a Final Four if you can't hang the banner? I don't know. Personally, I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either, but I mean, if not for nothing, Penny Hardaway can say on the recruiting trail going forward that he will fight for his players, because he is absolutely showing that right now, that he will go out and fight for somebody. And that looks a whole lot better than, well, you can't fight City Hall on a rule that I broke several years ago.
Absolutely. Well, we will see where this all plays out as we move forward. That next injunction hearing is scheduled for November 18th, but as we mentioned, it is subject to change. And for the team, they have their most important game of the season coming up with their only ranked matchup on the schedule right now against 15th ranked Oregon on Tuesday at the Moda Center in the inaugural Phil Knight Invitational. And for what we know, James Wiseman will be on that court, and they will need James Wiseman on that court against that team.
And it'll be a must watch.
It will be.